So here we have two brand new versions of one of last year's most popular affordable watches, that being this really sporty Timex E-Line Automatic. And this particular watch is a bit of a trend snapper for me, because historically I've never really been into buying the same watch in multiple colours. But as you can see, well, that isn't the case with this watch. Yeah, I've actually got two other versions of it here, and that's because I just can't help myself, man. I think this watch just looks so darn good, and they also don't cost a fortune to buy, so I've already got a couple of different versions, which I've been wearing a ton. And while this watch was already released in a couple of other colours too, it was this pair of latest editions that really caught my eye instead, and these are this kind of like icy blue, and then this pink colour, both of which have got this more metallic finish, which I thought looked really good. And this actually isn't the first light blue version of this watch. Timex very early on released a Tiffany blue version of this one, but that was a pretty tacky looking, extremely saturated dial with a more matte finish, and I don't know, that one really didn't do it for me. Whereas online, this more icy tone certainly was more up my street. Now, I would prefer it if it were a tiny bit darker, I think. On the online listing, while the main image is quite accurate, this one down here, like the thumbnail for it, does make it look a little bit darker, and if it was closer to that, it might be a bit better. But even so, do really like the look of this piece. And heck, at this point, I'm just trying to stack up as many as I can if I think I'm going to use them, because I'm really surprised myself with how much I've worn these watches, especially considering they're only using an acrylic crystal. Yeah, this is one of the first acrylic watches that I've really worn loads and loads. And you know what, if you're unfamiliar with this watch, I'll quickly run you through those specifications on this. So yeah, we have got an acrylic crystal on there. Now, it kind of makes sense with this watch, not just because of the kind of vintage styling, this one being a reissue of an 83 model, but also because this quite unique shape, as you can see. I'd hazard a guess that this might cost a fair chunk more if this were in a sapphire crystal, for instance, because it is like a squared off crystal. Not quite seen this exact shape before. This watch being like a TV dial, they call them, because I guess TVs used to be square like this back in the 80s, but it has got some more modern features. This is a 316L stainless steel case. This one has pretty good finishing too. Brushing's nice, polishing is really neatly done. This one has like a lip at the bottom, and then one at the top as well. And it is a pretty small watch. Not the smallest I've encountered, despite the size, because as you can see, it is still quite flat from side on. And it's also not the thinnest watch in the world. It's not huge, but it does wear bigger than the 34mm diameter would indicate. If you've tried square watches before, you'll probably know what to expect. But yeah, under the hood on this one, we've got a Miyota automatic movement. It is one of the 8000 series ones. I wonder if it says on here. No, it doesn't, but I'm sure I'll find out from the previous reviews I've done, and I'll leave it on screen for you. That's one of the only real disadvantages with this watch, I find. The movement can be a bit loud. It's also not the absolute thinnest, but like I said, it does ensure the watch doesn't fit too small. This one's got 50 meters of water resistance, which a lot of people would consider just about enough. And the functions here are pretty straightforward. We've got just a push-pull crown. So one step here just allows you to adjust the date wheel there. Nice small one tucked away on the right side with like a trapezoidal shape. And then going the second step out just allows you to adjust the hands on this one. No other special versions of this watch out just yet. What is special is the bracelet on this one. I mean, the community consensus on this, and me included, is that this is one of the first actually usable expansion bands we've seen in recent times. That's for a couple of reasons. Number one, just the shape of the links on this one. It just leaves you with slightly less gaps between them to get your hairs trapped into. It leaves quite a smooth finish. But primarily it's this adjustment mechanism they've got going on here. So a whole section of these you can't separate, which inherently makes it less likely to pinch on that section. But also it's got this amazing adjustment mechanism where you can simply push on the back of one of these links to separate the bracelet apart like that. And then you can just determine how many links you want to get rid of, press again and separate it, boom, and then push to just reattach. There we go. So yeah, very easily done, tool-free as well, and because of this mechanism, you can get a near-flawless fit on this watch, which is one of the reasons that previous expansion bands used to rip all your hairs out, because if it wasn't sized perfectly, and many were unadjustable, it would be compensating using this elasticated method by pulling extra tight on your wrist, and that was just a recipe for disaster. Whereas this one doesn't do that. Really cool bracelet that you can throw on. Only major downside I found is that if you want to do any vigorous exercise, it may indeed fly off. So not meant to be sprinted in. But aside from that, very, very comfortable. Kind of adjusts with you through the day a tiny bit as well. So certainly one of the best ones, and it's also one of the quickest to just lob on and off, as you can see from this. You can just literally chuck it on in a quarter of a second, so far less fuss. I'll give you a quick close-up of those dials, and then we'll get to measuring, Out of the two I've got here, I think maybe this is my least favourite of the two, despite it being my primary choice when I ordered these. I purchased both of these with my own money, by the way, on the Timex UK site using a discount code, which are aplenty at this time of year. You'll see that most watch retailers make most of their sales in the back half of the year, so they'll often give you a good stimulus or two in the first half to try and keep orders up. But yeah, definitely prefer this one to the Tiffany blue for sure. Actually, I'll just take this out of my direct studio light for a second and see how it looks in natural light. Okay, it actually looks a bit more silvery again, almost halfway between a silver and a light blue. There's a really good looking dial on this one. Quite simplistic hands and markers, as you can see. And no luminescence either, so good look in the dark. But nonetheless, it's a head turner. Definitely the most complimented watch I've had, the Timex E-line. One of my friends recently compared it to the Casio he had on. He had a gold square Casio, the AQ230, I think it was. And he said mine was like the posh version of what he had, which was this one. And it's not often in the real world you get compliments on your watches, so I thought that was pretty cool. And on that topic, I think this one looks really cool as well. That's always a bit of a concern for many guys, that colours like this one may look a bit too effeminate. Now, I'm not sure the camera is quite accurate on this one. I'll just turn it down a notch here, because I think in reality this is a fraction darker in person than it looks online. But I really like it. My dad always said it's the true mark of a man, whoever can pull off pink. I'm not sure exactly what tone of pink Timex calls this, because as of recording, at least on the Timex site, they don't actually put a name on the different colours. You just kind of click the colour and then add to cart. There isn't a specific name. Wouldn't say this is quite salmon though. This is definitely more towards like a standard pink. There is a little bit of cream in there, but not what I would consider a normal salmon colour. You know, it's not particularly orangey. But yeah, maybe prefer this one. I think my wife will like this actually, and at 34mm, she may still be able to get away with it. Maybe not quite because of the way the lugs fall, and because it is a bit thicker than what she usually wears. She just has a couple of square citizens from many moons ago that she very rarely will put on. I've got a couple of new tools to show you in this video. If you followed the channel for a while, you may notice that this isn't my normal caliper. And that's because my last caliper, while it has some advantages, like it's got a nice big display for on video, it also didn't feel perfectly accurate. And I'm not sure you can see it here, but when the jaws are closed, there is a slight gap here. Hard to tell against the black table, but the teeth here always measured slightly different than the flat section. So I got one made of a slightly different type of plastic. I think this one's like the carbon reinforced type plastic. And this one is not only to an extra decimal place, but it's also actually flat this time. So it should give more accurate readings overall. And if you've seen this watch before, this will be quite predictable in terms of size. About 34mm wide on this watch, so it is quite narrow. Now lug to lug is deceivingly short on this one. That's just shy of 41mm, which is very short. But the first two links on the bracelet here are kind of fixed in place to some extent. Now you can change the bands on these, and I can imagine that they'd suit a really good variety of straps, even though I've been lazy and just left mine on the bracelet. But those kind of fixed links do effectively boost it a tiny bit, as does the super flat profile on this watch. And flat as in straight, I should probably say, because it isn't super skinny by any stretch. With the crystal 12.4, if you were to exclude that really boxed crystal, it is quite thin, especially for a Miyota 8000 series watch at just over 9.5mm, which isn't bad at all. And you know what? I can kind of count the number of links I've got left here. 5 left in my existing bracelet. So I'll get down to that number, and that should be a guaranteed fit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I need to get rid of 2. Boom, and that's 5 on the blue one. Code name, by the way, for these pair, well, it's a bit of a mouthful, but if you want it, you can either head to the links in the video description where this watch will be, or you can pause the video now. Now, I do think after having tried to adjust both of these, I think that they've made this process slightly tighter. Don't know if maybe people were having issues with it being too loose or something. This does seem a little bit harder to use than last time, just by a fraction. But here we go with the ice blue one. And yeah, this watch definitely takes the cake for me for the best budget baller watch. I mean, I can't think of much that looks this cool without being like tacky or flashy for such a little amount of money, because these watches generally hover at around 200 quid or around 240 US dollars, I think it is. It does vary slightly depending on which color version you go for, but for that amount of money, these watches really do punch above their weight, and that's before you use any discount codes, which usually means you can get it for much less than that. I really like the look of this blue one now. It's on my wrist, actually. Probably don't quite go with my really dark maroon sweater here. My wrist is 6¼ inches, by the way, so my wrist is definitely towards the smaller end of things, but it's not abnormally small, and as you can see, this watch certainly doesn't look tiny. I've always thought it wears more like about a 37mm round watch. Just due to the square shape, it fits a bit bulkier and wider. But yeah, love this thing, really do. And this one also looks really sleek. Colour on this one reminds me of the Casio watch I reviewed a while back. Now that one was technically had a wider width, but looked much smaller than this because it was a round watch. MTPB 145, that was it, which came in almost identical colours to this. But this one's definitely got a bit more saturation and punch to it. And I speculate some of that's because it's using that acrylic crystal, not mineral crystal. This one just looks super clean, and that extends to the dial, I guess, too, because at a distance I'm not sure you could guess how much this watch was worth. Really gives you a lot of those much more expensive sports watch vibes, which I like. You can have a whole collection of them for less. I mean, who needs a moon swatch? And on the topic of crystals, actually, I've got another cool gadget that I recently purchased, so thanks to you guys for watching the channel. You mean I can upgrade my gear for these videos, because previously when it came to crystal tests, I used to have to use one of these, and this is kind of like the industry standard cheapo tester. And while it's okay for the money, it's also not the most accurate, I found, because as soon as the battery starts to lose power slightly, you'll just find that you slowly get lower and lower results over the weeks. And sometimes the strength of the result you get can just depend on how far this rocker here is. So I've gone and switched it out for this pretty cool Presidium gem tester. And this thing is really cool because not only can it differentiate between mineral and sapphire, but it can also differentiate between mineral and acrylic to some degree as well. Now see, this little hand here will reach all the way up to sapphire if it is sapphire, or reach up to the where it says glass there if it's mineral. And then if it's acrylic like these watches, it'll basically give either no result or it'll be right at the bottom of the glass section. I'm assuming it's based on some sort of thermal conductivity, a bit like the other one, but just gives you a better reading. So if I whack this on and then just wait for it to calibrate itself, or should I say warm up, I have the Casio A700, which I was able to finally confirm was mineral without having to scratch it using this. And then we've also got the Vair Field Watch. This is like their Dirty Dozen inspired one, whereas our Timexes here should be acrylic. But yeah, you'll see here, if I go in with this Casio, you should see the hand just stretch up towards the glass section. There we go. As you can see, it just eases its way into that red glass section now, which is cool. Whereas if I use this Vair watch, it just flies all the way up to sapphire, it should do. There we go, boom, straight into the sapphire section, almost up to diamond actually with this watch. Whereas the Timex watches should give me almost nothing. Not sure if the needle will move at all. Yeah, just as predicted, it makes it right up to the bottom edge of glass, but not into, so this is indeed just plastic. And that does mean that you can use your polywatch compound quite effectively to get rid of scratches, but it will also be pretty susceptible to scratches. And that's one thing I have experienced with this watch. It does have a fair few dinks on the crystal there, albeit I have worn the heck out of this thing. Yeah, I'm not sure you can fully appreciate them there, but there is a fair few scratches and dents on there. And a minor bugbear I've noticed with this pink one in particular is I think the tolerances are off here at the lugs. Not sure whether it's the main watch itself or whether it's the bracelet, but you'll see it just kind of gets a bit stuck there, which isn't the case on the other side or on any of my other watches in this range. If you did want to change the bracelet, it is a quick release bracelet. Let's see if I reseat that, if that'll fix anything. There we go. And yeah, that's made it a tiny bit better, but still not perfect. It does move now, but is a little bit of friction there. But either way, that's a quick first look at these cool Timex E-line watches. You'll find them linked below if you want to check them out for yourself. It's hard not to like any of the watches in this particular range. So yeah, keep them coming, Timex.